Welcome to the 6th edition of the Otero Family History Podcast, where we discuss Arizona history, review genealogy research tips, and explore the history of the Otero family of Tubac, Arizona. Today is Sunday, March 12, 2017. I'm your host, Diana DeLugan, Otero Family Historian. This broadcast is coming from my home office in Metro Phoenix near the South Mountain Radio Towers. Before I begin, I want to give a quick shout out to my son Christopher and grandson Jesse, who are both celebrating their birthdays this week. Que pasen un muy feliz cumpleaños. On this 6th Otero Family History Podcast, we'll celebrate Women's History Month. According to the National Women's History Project, the theme for this year is Honoring Trailblazing Women in Labor and Business. This is actually quite an appropriate theme for today's podcast, as history has often overlooked industrious women who absolutely contributed to our state's growth, social, and economic successes. During this podcast, we'll first browse Arizona Headline 100 Years Ago. Second, we'll check out a genealogy resource from the National Archives. This will be followed by a brief segment on Otero family history where we celebrate contributions made by Gabriela Otero, better known as Sister Clara of the Blessed Sacrament, an Arizona Women's Hall of Fame inductee. We'll wrap up today's show with an Arizona history moment in 1922 related to Arizona Postmistress Rosa Ronquillo Rhodes and a special comment about the late Teresa Leal of Nogales. I'm so excited because there's so much to share with you. Let's get started. 100 years ago, one Arizona Republican headline read, Married Men for Jurors in Woman's Trial. At Denver, Colorado, a Mrs. Stella M. Smith was in her second day of trial for the murder of her husband. Both the state and defense counsel struggled to seat a jury because potential male jurors were excused after they shared their conscientious scruples against capital punishment, or because of the thought that a woman could not be treated with the same harshness as a man. District Attorney Feely reported he would continue his efforts to seat a jury, no matter how long it might take to find a jury that would be open to the capital punishment of a woman. More headlines from the Society page of the Bisbee Daily News reported that the Soiree Club met at the home of Mrs. Linden. Green ferns decorated the rooms prettily. The Women's Club reading class met at the home of Miss Bledsoe, while invitations were issued by the Ladies' Bowling Club for a dancing party to be given at the Women's Club. The Women's League met at the church on Wednesday, where Mrs. A. Sinclair was elected president, Mrs. S. H. Kyle, secretary, and Mrs. George Bridge, treasurer. For holiday festivities, the ladies of the Church of St. Patrick were busy planning entertainment for March 16th, with dinner to be served. In addition, a tribute to an early female activist, Miss Grace Parker of New York, was printed. It said, Upon Miss Grace Parker of New York rests the responsibility for organizing the patriotic activities of the women of America in the event of war. She is the head of the National League for Women's Services, and already she is busy enrolling women to do their bit wherever they best can, from the munitions factories and agriculture to the Red Cross and Field Hospital. Miss Parker has studied conditions in Europe, particularly in regard to women war workers there, and because of the knowledge thus gained, she was selected by a committee of prominent Americans to organize American Women for War Service. Well, that was a brief glimpse of Arizona headlines 100 years ago. On this week's Genealogy Corner, let's look at an excellent research resource called the Resources for Genealogists page on the National Archives website at www.archives.gov/research/genealogy. The first thing you want to know about this site is that it has few online documents. However, since the National Archives is a repository, it stores our nation's most treasured records, including land records, military records, immigration, and court records, all which will be central to your genealogy research. The National Archives Resources for Genealogists page has a Start Your Family Research section that includes an overview of what records are available at the National Archives and links to websites with tutorials. In the Tools for Genealogists section, you'll find charts and forms, online research tools to access records by other federal agencies, records digitized by partners, and various finding aids. There's also a list of genealogy events, mostly held at Washington, D.C. and New York, but there's also a host of genealogy-related articles, including one on civilian service, explaining how to explore the National Directory of Employees, Agents, and Officers of the Federal Government from 1816 through 1959, and one on Native Americans in the Census, 1860 through 1890. Take time to learn about the History Hub link. The Hub is located at Washington, D.C. It's a space where the public can go to transcribe documents, tag documents, and scan documents to the National Archives holdings. When you scan your family's records into the Hub, you receive a digital copy of your scans free of charge, and those scans are uploaded into the National Archives catalog. This is really a great resource for genealogists who have accumulated years' worth of research but have no family members with an interest in continuing the family genealogy tradition. Rather than letting years of hard work go to waste, why not contribute it to the National Archives, where all our citizens can benefit from your hard work? Finally, one of my favorite resources is called Browse Popular Topics, which includes census records, ethnic heritage, military service records, immigration records, naturalization records, and more topics. For example, by clicking on the ethnic heritage link, it will reveal more focused subjects like the Mexican Bracero program, Mexican border crossings, and the Guide to Puerto Rican Records in the National Archives at New York. In the several years that I've been using the site, it has been regularly updated and provides valuable insight into rare documents. Share your thoughts. I'd like to hear if you find this site a useful resource. It's time for our segment on Otero Family History. As you heard at the top of the podcast, we're celebrating National Women's History Month that runs from March 1st to March 31st. Accordingly, it seems appropriate to honor one of the most notable women in Otero family history, Sister Clara Otero, born Gabriela Otero. She's most notable for her charitable work with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. She was but a young child of 3 years old when Tubac was sold by Mexico to the United States government pursuant to the Gadsden Purchase. As a devoted daughter, she helped her mother, Maria Clara Martinez de Otero, with household chores and helped care for her younger siblings, Fernando and Teófilo Otero, and nieces Ana Maria Comaduran and Brigita Castro. When she turned 13, Gabriela witnessed Civil War operations at Tubac and experienced the creation of the Arizona Territory in 1863. Her quiet domestic life drastically changed when she entered the St. Joseph's Convent and Academy for Females at Tucson on February 2, 1878. The convent and academy was originally established in 1870 adjacent to the old San Agustin Cathedral when the entire Arizona Territory had less than 10,000 inhabitants. It was also known as the French School because the founding nuns spoke French. Her name was officially changed from Gabriela Otero to Sister Clara of the Blessed Sacrament when she took her final and perpetual vows on March 12, 1880, before Bishop Salpointe. As an educator, she was diverse. She taught Spanish, drawing, painting, piano, harp, guitar, and violin. The Sisters of St. Joseph's of Carondelet, Los Angeles, wrote on May 12, 2016, that Sister Clara helped establish numerous institutions in Arizona. Specifically, she helped establish St. Mary's Hospital, St. Joseph's Academy, and San Javier School for Children at Tucson, the school at Comatqui near Laveen, and schools in Yuma, Florence, and Prescott. Here on the Otero Family History podcast, reporting verifiable information is paramount. Discrepancies should always be addressed. Sister Clara's online biography at the Arizona Women's Hall of Fame website, azwhf.org, has some questionable information. First, it reports that Sister Clara was born at Tucson. Census records taken during the 1860s report that she was in fact born at Tubac, not Tucson. Second, the bio reports that her family moved to Tucson prior to her birth. The same census records reveal that the Otero family did not move to Tucson until just prior to 1863, when her younger brother Teofilo was born. The bio also reports two facts about her ancestors worthy of mention. First, it says her ancestor, Don José de Otero, came from Spain to Rosario, Mexico in 1732. As Sister Clara's great-great-grandfather, Don José is important to the family history as the first Otero in the family to arrive from Spain to Mexico. Despite years of research, no record has ever been located or provided to the Otero Family History Collection to confirm that Don José arrived from Spain in 1732. Before this podcast, I contacted the Archivos de las Indias, Spain's premier national repository, who advised this reported fact could not be confirmed. Research on this issue continues. Second, the bio reports that Don Toribio migrated north to the frontier province known as Pimeria Alta. Pimeria Alta is known as the land of the Upper Pima Indians, comprised of northern Sonora and parts of southern Arizona. According to U.S. National Park Service Mission 2000 records, Don Toribio's father, José de Otero, and his wife, Francisca Granilla, were living at Curcurpe, Sonora, at the time of Don Toribio's marriage to Maria Ignacia Salazar on February 16, 1779. A map by cartographer Francisco Ferten in 1762 from the Biblioteca Digital de España, or Spain's digital library, depicts Curcurpe as located within Pimeria Alta. This information strongly suggests that if Don Toribio lived with his family at Curcurpe before his marriage to Maria Ignacia, he did not have to travel to Pimeria Alta because he already lived there. Sister Clara loved the church, and she loved her family dearly. When her sister Maria Manuela Kisi died, she, along with Teofilo, transferred their legal right to title and interest in Manuela's estate in exchange for Brother Sabino's love and affection. Late in her life, Sister Clara was particularly troubled by her querido hermanos, those are her words, Teofilo's careless way of life. In a letter dated December 26, 1901, she lamented over her brother's failure to attend church and reminded him that being a good Christian, observing the mandates of the Sacred Mother Church, and dedication to hard work would put the end to all his mal, or bad ways. Despite having been ill for several years, she continued to attend to her assigned chores prior to her death with grace and dignity. Sister Clara died of consumption at St. Joseph's Academy on September 4, 1905, at the age of 56. To this day, Gabriela Otero, known as Sister Clara Otero, remains one of Arizona's most notable Hispanic female pioneers. She was inducted into the Arizona Women's Hall of Fame at a ceremony on October 29, 1988, at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Phoenix as one of the first young Arizona women to enter a religious order. The Hall of Fame was established by the Arizona Women's Commission to honor women who have contributed significantly to the state's development and progress. In her honor, a quilt with her image was made by the Arizona Quilters Guild and placed on permanent display at the Carnegie Center Building, 1101 West Washington Street in downtown Phoenix. Her image is also available online at the Arizona Memory Project. The search for Otero family history continues. If you have information about a family member or notable event related to Otero family history, please email me at diana.delugan@gmail.com. Okay, it's time for our Arizona History Moment. In keeping with this week's theme honoring Women's History Month, we're going to look at 1922 as the date for our Arizona History Moment, when Rosa Ronquillo Rhodes began her industrious career as the postmistress at the Redington Ranch in Pima County. On April 27, 1894, Rosa was born to a humble but very traditional Mexican family. The youngest of 12 children, she was the first child in her family to become literate at a time when women were considered servient. Rosa was taught to read by Esther Hillert in exchange for Rosa's help doing odd jobs at the local school. In time, Rosa continued her education at the San Javier Indian Reservation, where she lived with and learned from teacher Miss Herndon. Prior to 1922, Rosa lived at Redington and befriended postmaster Norman J. Roberts and his family. After Roberts retired in 1922, Rosa Ronquillo succeeded Roberts as the postmistress after Roberts submitted a stellar recommendation on Rosa's behalf. From the 1920s to the 1930s, her welcoming smile and gracious nature was the very heart of her community. Rosa got to know the locals who came to rely on her for help to fill out forms and order items from the catalogs. The post office doubled as Rosa's home on the Carlinks Ranch. In the early days of Rosa's tenure, mail would be distributed through the window of the room that served as Rosa's daughter's Bertha's bedroom window, located on the right side of the building. By the 1930s, a window with bars was installed by the federal government on the front left side of the building. Petite Rosa Ronquillo married William Rhodes in 1930. Her tenure as postmistress ended in 1936. Rosa died on February 24, 1982. She's buried at Holy Hope Cemetery next to her son Fidel Rhodes, a Purple Heart recipient. I encourage you to learn more about her public service to Arizona through several available archives. A collection of photographs, postcards, and postal documents regarding Rosa's role as postmistress is available online for viewing as a courtesy of the Arizona Memory Project. Rosa's handwritten diaries from 1946 to 1980 are available at the Arizona Historical Society Research Library at Tucson. In addition, an illuminating archive called the Rosa Ronquillo Rhodes Collection was compiled and donated by Bertha Rose, Rosa's daughter, to the Postal History Foundation at Tucson. For more information about this collection, call 520-623-6652. Because of Rosa Ronquillo Rhodes' illustrious career as the Redington postmistress, we celebrate 1922, the year Rosa began her career as a public servant, as this week's Arizona History Moment. Well, that's all for today. Before I go, here's my takeaway from today's podcast. Today we learned how women like Sister Clara Otero and Rosa Ronquillo Rhodes dedicated themselves to their communities, and because of them, our Arizona communities thrived. Look around you. Take time to notice the women who contribute to your own community. If you are a female and don't know a woman who fits that role, consider assuming it. Your neighbors, your community, your state needs you. In honor of National Women's Month, I'm taking these last few minutes to tell you about a remarkable woman that I knew and was blessed to call friend, Teresa Leal, former docent at the Pimeria Alta Historical Society at Nogales, Arizona. She was a one-of-a-kind, dedicated public servant and possessed the kindest heart. As I close, I defer to the words of the Honorable Raul M. Grijalva of Arizona from the Congressional Record at the United States House of Representatives on Wednesday, May 25, 2016. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and memory of Teresa Leal, a passionate historian and activist and curator of the Pimeria Alta Historical Society Museum. Teresa passed away on May 1st, 2016 in Nogales, Arizona, at the place dearest to her, the museum at which she proudly worked for over 20 years. Teresa's roots are every bit as eclectic as our nation as a whole, with lineage tracing back to Mexican, Chinese, and Opatan native ancestors. Born in Navajoa, Sonora, she was raised in Tucson, Arizona, and attended Catalina High School. Teresa was only 16 years old when she joined the United Farm Workers to educate female cotton workers on the risks they faced at their jobs. As a young girl, her mother, Isabel Leal, was a chef to United States Ambassador to the Court of St. James in Great Britain, Louis Douglas, who later became Teresa's friend and mentor. Growing up, Teresa was fortunate to meet important figures in the reconstruction of the post-World War II world, like John McCloy, the post-war High Commissioner of Germany. After graduation, she enrolled at the University of San Carlos in Guatemala, where she studied social anthropology. Teresa later came back to Nogales, Sonora, where she spent the rest of her life. In 1986, Teresa founded the women's group known as Proyecto Comadres, where she addressed labor, environmental, and civil rights issues concerning women who labored at the maquiladoras in Nogales, Sonora. As the group's membership grew, they expanded their efforts to include women who faced domestic violence and economic or family struggles. At the same time, she served as a substitute teacher in Mexico. Teresa also worked with the Binational Health Council to examine health issues affecting both sides of the Nogales border, as well as the non-governmental organization Gente de Itotol in Sonora, where she trained indigenous women as health educators throughout the Yaqui, Seri, and Tohono tribes. Teresa was the grantee recipient from the Southwest Network for Environmental and Economic Justice and also a member of the National Advisory Council for the North American Commission for Environmental Cooperation. Teresa was also a freelance journalist working with La Voz del Norte newspaper in Sonora from 1984 to 1989 and the Nogales International newspaper, among several other publications. Teresa ended her career as a curator of Pimeria Alta Historical Society Museum, where family, friends, and colleagues remembered her as a selfless person committed to keeping local history alive. Southern Arizona and the borderlands will miss Teresa Leal's passion, sense of justice, and love of her community. Teresa leaves a living legacy of leadership, empowerment, and commitment to social and economic justice. This legacy will continue to make all of us better and our community a better place. Well, that's all for today. Feel free to comment or subscribe to this podcast. You can reach me directly at diana.delugan@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. This is Diana DeLugan, Otero Family Historian, signing off. Hasta la próxima.